Hello everyone, Steve here, and today we are doing yet another movie review of a movie that was recently released, and those are hard to come by in 2020. This movie was released on Hulu a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and I got around to watching it this weekend. The movie I'm talking about is Palm Springs, directed by Max Barbakow and starring Andy Samberg, Cristin Milioti, and J.K. Simmons. And before we dive into the review of Palm Springs, fun fact about Palm Springs, as long as IMDb's trivia page for the movie is correct. After it was shown at Sundance, it holds the distinction of breaking the record for the biggest Sundance movie sale ever, and it beat the previous record, allegedly, by 69 cents. Get your mind out of the gutter, Steve. Let's get on with the review. The film follows Sarah, played by Cristin Milioti, as a reluctant bridesmaid at a wedding in Palm Springs. She meets Niles, a supposedly carefree, free-spirited guy played by Andy Samberg, and they seem to hit it off pretty well. That is until Sarah unintentionally finds herself stuck in a time loop, which Niles has already been stuck in for quite some time, in which they are forced to live the same day over and over again. And as they continue to relive this day, they find meaning in a life that doesn't seem to have one at first. Like many other people, when I first saw the trailers for this film, which it was pretty heavily advertised, surprisingly, and when I first read the plotline of the movie, I could not help but draw comparisons to another movie that I'm guessing all of you guys are already thinking of right now after I read that plot. The movie I'm thinking of is a movie that very many people consider to be one of the greatest comedies of all time, and also follows a very similar plot in which a guy played by Bill Murray finds himself stuck in the same day over and over and over again, and eventually, through a lot of misadventures, and through a lot of thoughts, and through a lot of interaction, finds meaning in his life, even though he's stuck in the same day over and over again. And that movie I'm talking about is Groundhog Day. I could not help but compare this movie to Groundhog Day before I even saw it. And I'm not gonna lie, I was very skeptical about how good this film was going to be, because there have been very many clones of Groundhog Day that didn't put anything new on the table. And because of that, I was worried about even watching Palm Springs. I didn't really have very high expectations for it. However, something magical happened after I watched Palm Springs. Palm Springs actually ended up turning out to be a very good movie. I'd go as far to say that it is one of the better ones that came out in 2020, which that's not a very big list because, 2020. But of the films that did get released in 2020 and the ones we saw in 2020, this is definitely one of the better ones, and I was thoroughly surprised by that. Like any other movie I review, I'll start off with the performances, which are excellent across the board. Andy Samberg in particular really gets to shine here. We all know that he's a very funny guy, and we all know that he can hold his own in the comedy space, but he's extraordinarily likable here. Anytime you have a character like the one he's playing, you run a really high risk of that character being annoying. And there were very many opportunities to, be lazy and make this character really annoying. But he's actually really, really endearing and extremely likable. And that's all because of Andy Samberg and how he portrays the character. I really have to give him props for that. And I have to say the same thing about Cristin Milioti's character. Cristin Milioti's character is one that could very easily become annoying. But Cristin Milioti is such a fantastic actress, does a fantastic job at portraying this character and playing this part. She not only makes her funny, and she not only delivers some of the funniest lines in the movie, but her character just goes through such a wide range of emotions throughout the movie, and she plays it perfectly. And the best part about it is that Cristin Milioti and Andy Samberg surprisingly have extraordinarily good chemistry. They're perfect in this film. I wouldn't change a single thing about what they did with these roles. And it would be a crime for me to not talk about J.K. Simmons in any film, but especially here, because although his character's role is small and kind of short, it's very important. And I just have to say, just like anything he touches, he's great in this role. And if you pay very close attention, there's a little bit of an ode to Whiplash in the movie. Won't spoil it. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the plot line of this movie isn't particularly unique. We've seen numerous movies in the past, probably the greatest example being Groundhog Day, in which a person gets stuck in a time loop and they're forced to relive the same day over and over again. But this movie does something fairly unique with that, in that it brings us two people who have to go through it together. And it's actually really fun seeing how they put the movie together. There are certain instances of foreshadowing. Don't worry, won't give anything away here. No spoilers. Spoiler-free review. But there are certain instances of foreshadowing where the movie kind of hints at something. Even though you can kind of predict in certain ways where it's going to go, the way in which it reveals it is really kind of cool. Like, there's one instance in particular that I truly did not expect to be revealed in the way in which it was. And it's almost as if it was sitting underneath my nose the entire time, but I still didn't catch it. And the movie has a few instances of that that are really kind of cool, so it also throws that unique spin onto the table. And being a comedy with an overly familiar plot, this movie ran the risk of being terribly unfunny, but it's the total opposite. This movie is extraordinarily enjoyable and often very funny. Now, while there are some laugh-out-loud moments, not every single joke lands, but at the same time, sometimes you end up finding yourself laughing at it in spite of yourself because the main characters have such an infectious charm to them that you can't help but smile at what they're doing on screen. And that factors into one of the things that I love the most about the movie, is that it really feels like there's genuine heart to it. There are a lot of really sweet moments, and they ran the risk of being fake sweet, like saccharin, let's say, but it's not. There's a genuine sweetness to a lot of this movie. And there are surprisingly deep moments too that I truly wasn't expecting. Again, spoiler free, won't give anything away. But there is a scene where the main characters are having a conversation. And as I mentioned before, Andy Samberg's character has been stuck in this time loop for a very long time, or at least it's presented to us that way. And again, no spoiler, you get that information in the trailer. But there's this one scene where he and Cristin Milioti's character are having a conversation, and they're just talking about the things that they know, and kind of talking about what Andy Samberg knows so far about being stuck in this time loop and what his experiences have been, and what his life was like apparently outside of this time loop before he got stuck in it. And Cristin Milioti's character asks him a very simple question, something that any of us could answer right off the top of our heads. But Andy Samberg's character has trouble answering that question. And that really gives us a look into how painful being stuck in the same day over and over again, and how lonely that must be. It's such a simple idea, but it ends up being pretty heartbreaking. And that's just one example. There are a lot of moments like that. But overall, this is an extremely likable movie. Now, I have to recommend it. This is one of the better movies of 2020. If there's any negative that I have to give the film, one thing that I could say is that there are some jokes that don't land. There's one in particular I can think of where it doesn't really gel with the rest of the movie. It's one of those ones where they took like 1 or 2 minutes doing the joke where it could have just been like 10 seconds or not used at all, and the movie still would have been fine, and it still would have got its point across. But at the same time, I feel like that's really nitpicking, considering it was still entertaining, and the movie just has this genuine sweetness and charm to it that makes you laugh at it in spite of yourself. I mean, I don't want to nitpick this movie. This is definitely one of the better movies of 2020. It's definitely really charming, it's really funny, has some of the better performances that I've seen this year, and because of all of that, I highly recommend it. If you have a subscription to Hulu, or if you have any other way of watching this movie, check it out. Definitely, you will not be disappointed. And while that is it for this review, don't worry. I'm definitely going to be posting more movie reviews, and I'm going to do my best to post movie reviews of things that are at least relatively new, especially in this day and age when we have the pandemic going on. And I definitely want to make more content for you guys. So stay tuned for more filmic content, and feel free to like this video. It definitely helps the channel out. And also feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. And to those who have subscribed and keep watching my content, thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to say have a good one, guys. Stay safe. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.